I did it. I'm done. It's the end of Network Field Day, end of day three, and it was we had some different companies in today. So obviously this week started with two really big names, and then we had heard some other names in the middle on day two that you may or may not be familiar with. Day three was pretty much all new companies that I haven't heard of before, with an interesting twist. Progress was up first, and but coming into Network Field Day, I was looking through the list of vendors who were going to be here. Progress. No, I've never heard of Progress. So looked them up, and turns out they are the caretakers of WhatsUp Gold. And WhatsUp Gold is it's it has been around for a long time. I can recall back to college, so early 2000s, using WhatsUp Gold in my college, like in my college labs, and that was kind of the last time I saw them. And I don't know exactly when Progress took them over, but I can definitely tell you that I wish I'd have known about them sooner, or that WhatsUp Gold was really still around and being actively developed before today, because I believe there are quite a few times in my career where I actually would have really considered them, as far as just monitoring goes, just for up down. What's up? That's why it's called What's Up Gold. So there were a few things in there that I pulled out that I thought were really nice. One thing that was in there was their mapping abilities, just to draw network maps. That's tough. That's tough for engineers to do. That's tough to do in a way that it's integrated into your monitoring platform. And even the company that I kind of know that does this, I'm going to use the word best here real loosely, is SolarWinds, that they have the ability to do that. But then you have to get really up there on the high end to find network monitoring tools that have mapping built in, because most of them don't want to do that. Then your alternative is obviously Visio, static diagrams that just die and rot in file folders or SharePoint directories. But their mapping is built in, and it's not super it's not super fancy. It's pretty low frills, but it works, and it's there, and that's enough the majority of the time. I enjoyed their licensing model as well. It's just per device. That's it. It's not per port. There there are some weird answers in there when we started to grill them, inquire as to how far that really extends. And it a device could be a chassis, and it'll include all the line cards. They also said that a device could be, if you think like a Cisco Nexus type Nexus 5000, where you've got the 2000 and the 3000 FEXs that hang off from there, that would be counted as a single device. Then I asked them specifically about VSS and really just any kind of virtual chassis, and they said, well, in a virtual chassis, it would be two, one for each. But then that kind of runs counterintuitive against the FEX answer that it's one for all. And I was going to push them a little bit harder on it, but the stark reality is that the licensing, it's pretty affordable. And I don't remember the exact pricing off the top of my head, but I, if it's not that expensive, I'm probably not going to fight too hard against it. So we're fine there. But it was just a little interesting change in the conversation when you went from the FEX to the VSS. Something else that they did in there, and this sort of built towards the end conversation, was they have logging in there, and they fully admitted it's not as powerful as Splunk. It's not going to be as powerful as Splunk. But if you need Splunk's power, you can export out over to Splunk and take advantage of that. And what that sort of clicked in my head was that they know their market, and their market's not large enterprise. I'm going to caveat saying that there is one thing that is large enterprise ish, but generally speaking, they're sort of that middle class tier, to where you don't have $250,000, you don't have $500,000 to spend on a monitoring tool, and a monitoring tool that costs that much is going to take a lot of time to set up, that they've got this really good mid-size company and down software that'll do monitoring. It's going to do a lot. It's your monitoring, your logging, your mapping. There's some other. There's a bunch of features in there, but the point is that if you're not a huge enterprise, WhatsUp Gold should be considered. You should absolutely look at it. It's definitely lacking in some of the API or the programmatic abilities, but it sounded like that's on their radar, so they're definitely worth checking out. So coming back to the enterprise side, I was asking them to try and clarify where they fit, and they mentioned that there are some large enterprises that are using them, and it was interesting the way that they talked about it. So they were speaking about Ford, so massive company. Ford uses WhatsUp Gold, but not Ford corporate, not the Ford, like the Ford company. It turns out that they have some of their plants, their manufacturing plants, use WhatsUp Gold, because at that corporate level, that higher level, maybe they're just watching a couple key assets inside that main facility, to make sure they have connectivity in and out. But then the facility itself is essentially a self-contained IT or organization inside the parent organization, so they actually run it at that level. And when they explained it like that, then I kind of like it. I get the fit in enterprise, because you're not doing it for the enterprise, but you are technically inside of the enterprise. So if there are small business units that have their own monitoring needs, or you're setting up a test environment, or you're a small part of a larger organization and you need some kind of monitoring because it's too difficult to interoperate with the enterprise side, and you can keep going and going and going, but you kind of get where I'm going here, is that there's a fit. There's a lot of different fits for WhatsUp Gold. So I wish I'd have known earlier. I already said that. I'm just re-emphasizing it, because if you're watching this and you can't spend $250,000, but you don't want to use Nagios and some of the other more common open source names that are out there, check them out. Absolutely worth it. So the second presenter that came on was Augtera, and this is a company I'd never heard of before. And so while doing my research for them, went to their homepage, and right there on the homepage, they talk about how they're trying to reduce alerting for network engineers, or just reduce excess or erroneous alerts. And to me, that brings me back to my healthcare days, my healthcare IT days, because inside of healthcare, there's this concept, and it is a well-known concept. There are white papers on it. When manufacturers, healthcare hardware manufacturers, are building hardware, they have machines that make noises, pumps and all kinds of different things that get hooked up to the bodies. And the concept of alert fatigue is very real, very, very well studied, documented, and brought in as part of their pipeline, their design protocol, or the design prototype, designs. How about designs? We'll go with designs. So the idea here behind alert fatigue is that there's a lot of noise in a hospital. There are lots of beeps, and those beeps have a tendency to be drowned out by other beeps and other tones and the other cadence and din of noise that is just inside of a hospital. And if a nurse hears that too often, too frequently, they become desensitized to it, and it's possible that they miss the critical alerts. Augtera didn't use those terms, and at the end, I encouraged them to actually use that terminology, because it's something you can Google and see and understand. But that is ultimately what they're trying to do, is cut down on the amount of bad noise, erroneous additional noise that engineers have to deal with when they're doing their job. So ultimately, sort of at its core, Augtera is it's not just this, but my similarity is or the similarity that I'll draw here is that they are a syslog aggregator with a boatload of AI built in to help parse out those messages and only deliver messages that you care about. And something that was mentioned in there that I really appreciated was part of their anomaly detection algorithms. And they said, well, we tried and failed many times. And to me, up here, that said, well, that means that they're trying, that they are actively trying to develop this system that can help engineers really cut through the noise and only hear the alerts that they want. So one thing that they had in there that I particularly enjoyed was they called it proactive detection of SD-WAN underlays. Because if you think about SD-WAN and any overlay technology right now, the idea of the overlay is to conceal the underlay so that you don't have to think about it at that level. You can extend your VLANs and route back and forth, or maybe not even route back and forth, switch back and forth. But even when you've got all that fancy stuff on the top, that fancy overlay, the overlay still rides on top of an underlay. And if your underlay breaks, you don't have an overlay. It doesn't matter. It's still broken. And there's a lot of obfuscation when you start looking at underlays, and they sort of give you a way to cut through that and look for the drops and look for the packet based issues that would exist on that underlay and present it to you. And I just thought that was really novel, because that's something I don't hear a lot about is, overlay. Yeah, but it still rides on top of something. So the fact that they've thought about that and that's part of what they do, I absolutely love. At the ends, this is where I hit them with the question that I need to see it, because I've heard other companies say this before, and the way I roughly phrased the question was, I'm a network engineer, and I've been monitoring my equipment through SNMP forever, and it's worked. But there are times where the system it's just not tuned properly, and I get too many alerts, and that's where the alert fatigue came up. It's going to be hard to convince me that you can take a syslog based monitoring tool, and they actually, in full transparency, they did say that you can integrate SNMP in there as well and use that as sort of a secondary feed that rolls up into this platform. But even without that they're saying that you can create actionable alerts just based on the syslog data, and it's not too much. Like, you're going to get one alert for one thing that's flapping. You're going to get one alert when a site goes down. I need to see it. I really need to see it. I mean, I know everybody's hiring, scientists and mathematicians, and they're all trying to bring all this AI into their platforms. And we heard a lot about that from Juniper on on day one. I got to see it. And afterwards, and it was over lunch, we had a really good conversation about what would it take for me as an engineer to trust it. And the answer for them, the answer I gave back to them, which I think is the answer that you have to give back to any product, is you got to crawl, you got to walk, and then you got to run. And maybe for them, it means crawling across 3 stages before you even walk, because I'm just so distrustful, because I've seen so many companies just fail at this. We're going to reduce your alert spam. We're only going to deliver you actionable alerts. I want them to do it. I want it to be successful, because that's something that I want to use. So the last company that was in was Pika 8. I really was looking forward to the conversation, and I didn't get what I was expecting out of it, but I think that's okay, because Pika 8 is a white box networking software provider. Not hardware, just software, because that's the idea, right? Is that software should run on any switch. mostly, not literally any switch, but switches that are designed to be white boxed networking switches. So I was hoping to see more of the hardware. At least that was in my head before the session started. And then once we got into it for a couple minutes, I was, oh yeah, you're probably not going to really see the hardware because that's the point. You don't care about the hardware, you care about the software. And they had their hardware compatibility list. There were three names on there. Dell is the one that sticks out the most to me. But there were the more they walked through the platform, the more I wanted to see. And they only had an hour with us today. I wish they had maybe 90 minutes, upwards of 2 hours, because the stuff that they had in there was genuinely cool. So the licensing was very straightforward. It's a single license and the same software. The thing that I found really cool about that software licensing, is let's say you've got 10 switches and they're generation 1 hardware. I'm just making up terms. But then it's a couple years down the road and you're ready to dump that generation 1 hardware for generation 2 hardware. That software license still applies to the next hardware that you replace it with. And I don't know why that feels novel or sounded novel, but I really appreciated it, because when you buy normal switches, when you throw the switch out, there's nothing that you carry along that's going to work with you or that's going to work on the next switch. And maybe you can save some optics, or the power cables are still compatible, or the network cards or the cables still work. But the software, that's generally gone. But with the white box software, since they don't care about the hardware, they care about the software, you still keep your license for that software. It perpetually, you own it. That is yours. It's like the old school Microsoft days before they decided, and everybody else started to license, Word. You could buy a copy of Word 97 and it would work on the next computer and the next computer. So it was really refreshing to see that that's not dead. That's still alive, and you can get it in an actively developed networking platform. So that was really cool. Their documentation, I didn't dig too deep in their documentation. Jeremy Schulman was looking for something very specific, PTP, Precision Time Protocol, which I'm not familiar with. But he asked them, hey, do you guys support PTP? And they immediately shot back. Go look at our docs. I think it was docs.pika8.com. And the cool thing about that is it wasn't behind, I don't know if paywall's the right term, but it wasn't behind a login screen, that it was there and you can just get to it. So I've dealt with so much Cisco in my life, and that used to be the way that Cisco was. You could just go look at documentation or go to the forums, and then at some point in time they said, no mas, no more. You've got to log in, you've got to have an account to view this stuff. And that wasn't the case with them. You could just go look at it, check it out. It was some really cool stuff. There's something in there, and this was again Jeremy Schulman who got into this, was that they basically cloned very closely Juniper's commit confirm when it comes to applying configuration. And for a lot of people, for a lot of engineers out there, I don't want to say that's the only deciding feature why you might buy one thing or something else, but it heavily influences depending on how your organization or how your team works. So they had that in there, which I thought was pretty cool. Then they got into their cloud. Cloud might not be the right word, but just their orchestration platform. And I was pleasantly surprised how feature packed it was, considering. I mean, I hate to say considering that it's white box switching, but just considering that it's not Cisco, it's not Juniper, it's not Arista, that you could do a lot of stuff in there, and the automation part of it was really what caught my attention. So I'm going to speak real specifically here to DNA Center, because when it comes to this level, it's the platform that I know the best, and you can do a lot of really interesting automation things inside of DNA Center. So you've got a switch, it comes online and it does a 0 day provision, and then you do a day one provision and you push down all these configurations, but you need to learn that scripting language in order to be able to do that. And it's not a terribly difficult scripting language, but you've got to play with it like you do anything that's new until you get the hang of it. And you still have to get pretty programmatic to make it work. So if you need variables, you have to know how to define the variables, and then thankfully it's smart enough to know that DNA Center is smart enough to know that you inserted a variable into a script, and it can prompt you for it. So it works. But inside of Pika 8's platform, they basically had a little tree that you would navigate and just click the things that you wanted to do, and it would bring them over. So where I think that's really helpful is that if you're new to Pika 8 and you don't know their commands, like how their commands work, they're sort of just all right there nested, and you drag in and drop what you need. And you don't have to worry about, well, how do I define variables, which honestly, once you know how to do it inside DNA Center, it's not that hard. But it was all there in a very drag and drop, click friendly way of building it out. And then once you have your templates or you have some sort of config that you're going to push, it would do a test push into a virtual switch that lives inside the platform so that they can verify what you're trying to send is actually valid. Because even though you have the tree, you could still drag and drop things out of line or put things together in a way they don't make sense to the platform. But it was just built in right there. And they kind of kept going on this. It's software, guys. You can run it. I mean, okay, you can run a lot of stuff in GNS3 these days, but that was like sort of part of the points. They said, here, run it. More importantly, we support it. We like this. This is the kind of stuff that we have in there. And then just the rest of the platform was very well feature packed. I was very impressed. Just all the different API things that you can do with it, all of the firmware upgrades, and I mean, being honest, it was all there. It was a DNA Center counterpart. It is a Cloud Vision counterpart. It was really refreshing to see. So these days, with hardware shortages being what they are, or just delay times, I think I would give Pika 8 an honest shake in the right environment. I'm not putting it in my data center. Not today, but a small branch office, I think that would be a good place to check it out. Or maybe not even a branch office, maybe just a little bit larger office that has a couple of IDFs that you can kind of test it out. And it was really cool, really slick. Again, I don't know why I thought I was going to see more on the hardware side when it came to a white box switch conversation, but really nice stuff. I really recommend you check them out. So those are the 3 vendors we saw today, the 9 vendors we saw this week. And I'm going to do a better recap and do more of a, hey, here's my take on Network Field Day, because this was my first time delegate. I've watched a lot of videos online, watched a lot of replays, and they don't do it justice. And I really feel for the folks who participated while COVID was, while lockdowns were a bit stronger than they are right now. And for those first-time delegates who were part of that, who didn't get to experience the on-prem, in-person event, because it honestly was I'm going to say, the most professionally rewarding experience in terms of conferences and things like that I've ever been part of. Cisco Live is a wonderful conference, but you're there with 20,000 other people. And to be here in a room with 7 physical and 3 virtual delegates, to be able to interact with these professionals and to have really really candid and fun conversations about technology that I truly love. I love networking. It, it's been absolutely amazing. I'm humbled to have been a part of it. I hope that I did a good job as a delegate and am invited back to future events because honestly, it's been amazing. Apply to be a delegate. You won't regret it. So, thank you for watching. I hope you found something out of any of my videos that are going to give you a reason to go out and check out some of these vendors and what they're doing. I know my conversations here really haven't been, well, I'm going to walk you through the platform. There's a whole 1-2 hour video that'll do you that. I really just wanted to share the things that I took away and I found value of. So thank you for watching. Hopefully I get to do more of these videos at a future network field day. But what can I say? It's been fabulous. Take care, everyone.